What up, meatheads? It's Travis, American Butcher, and this once again on episode 132. Yes, 132. I can't believe we've made it all the way to 132, and I say that as if 132 is a important milestone in the podcast community. It is not. I'd be excited when we reach episode 138 because, we truly are 138. And if you don't get that reference, then you may not like one of the questions I answer in this Q&A with me, Travis, aka the American Butcher. And once again, this is the Meat Block Podcast, the weekly podcast for butchers by everyone. You do not have to be a butcher to enjoy this show. You could be a novelist, not a novelist. Well, maybe you are a novelist. Maybe you write great works of fiction and nonfiction about life and memoirs and, times at sea. Maybe you're a real estate novelist. What does that mean? Well, what I think he was saying in that song is that he was a novelist in the sense that he wasn't very good or wasn't taken seriously yet because he was still a real estate agent. Another way to read that line is that he possibly was just into the novelty of being a real estate agent, which doesn't make sense to me either. So if you want to break down the lyrics to The Piano Man and let me know what that means, why is Davey still in the Navy? And he'll probably will be for life. Anyway, that whole point was saying you don't have to be a butcher to enjoy this show. My mom is not a butcher and she listens to every week. Her only criticism is when I say the F word a lot. And I got news for you, Mom. This is my show. So, farts. Anyway.
Good cutting enhances the quality of good meat. Poor cutting results in an inferior piece of meat, regardless of quality.
Listen to this. Fart you, farthead.
Is that how F-bombs are dropped, you idiot?
Oh, come on, Shank. Oh, the fart it is, farter. Fart all y'all go fart yourself.
All right. Did you enjoy that? Did you enjoy that meat wad Aqua Teen Hunger Force snippet that I threw in there? All right, and the first question from Jamie Jam, one of my favorite questions, is artificial or natural garnish for the casing? For the cases, for your butcher cases in the retail setting. What do I prefer? Do I like that natural, green, luscious, real rosemary, real kale, some thyme, some sage, make it like a Simon and Garfunkel song. Or do I like the artificial kale leafy green sides where it's like the I don't know how to describe it, but they come in many colors. And you can buy all those at Davidson's Butcher Supply. But what do I like? I like them both for different reasons and for different applications. So the idea of your display is to show bounty and to show abundance. And there's ways to achieve this with, sometimes minimal product out and then fluffing your case with greens and, Brivant in life. But if you have a 50-foot case in a, bigger store where you have a lot of box product coming in and a lot of stuff going out, it may not make sense to spend so much money on leafy greens and real organic material going in your case to show that bounty. And the reason is because that stuff's going to wilt and, the cost could add up, whereas parsley lined sides don't. And you could wash them, you could throw them in, your 3-bay sink and do a sanitation cycle and then flip them when you close your case or, during your daily cleanup. But if you have that smaller case, that more boutique case, I really love seeing beautiful displays of stuff, because the contrast of green life next to the red meat, not only does it make you think of Christmas, but no, it just makes it's just a good contrast. It's a good complementary color where it's, a little bit of its negative self. And there's a whole rule with color wheels and contrast and what colors go well together. And I think the ratio is that you want, you don't want equal amounts of the color. Otherwise that creates ugliness, but you want like 20% of your contrast color to create, that will give a good contrast. Like you would an accents wall in your house, that you don't want half your house to be blue and the other half to be orange. You may just want, one wall to be, like a pastel or something like that, and the rest be blue. That's like, visual design 101 in marketing. And when you take logo classes and shit, they teach you that. But anyway, so I like both of them. I love the vibrantness of seeing that lush green, but it's an immediate turnoff when that stuff starts browning or wilting, or the leaves are falling off, or if it's just haphazardly thrown in there. You want it to look nice. You want it to be attractive. You want people to be like, hey, I do like that. That may subconsciously be like, I need a sprig of thyme to use for this pork belly I'm going to buy for a porchetta. And obviously, you don't want to be selling the greens out of your case. You want to use it more or less for its purpose of display, because if you sell it out of your case, you don't know if they're going to use it with their meat or use it in a fresh salad, and you just want to be food safety about this and just think about those things and be like, well, if you like some thyme, I could interest you over in this fresh thyme we have over here. And they'd be like, oh yeah, that's great. One thing that just popped into my head while I was saying this is spritzers at grocery store, the humidity, the rainers, like if you ever are in a big store and then the lights flash and it sounds like thunder, and then it's like real mild. And then it starts misting to keep the vegetables moist. That actually makes them, their shelf life decrease, but we do it because our minds are trained to think that that's what fresh is that the fact that it's moist to the touch. Maybe there's some weird things going on in our head that are attracted to that moistness. But I also love those plastic green sides, usually with like a pink butcher paper with your white tags, with your orange letters that you change out. Like on the daily, when you have a sale, you do that. Like just imagine like a 1970s butcher counter that hasn't changed. And, like something about that is just so a representative of like growing up in Americana to me. It's like that pick of nostalgia where, the paper it's on is pink to hide the purge stains of the wilting beef. There may be a little bit of condensation at the top of the cooler, and people working there don't take care of it because it's not affecting their sales. You may see this in bigger stores. You may see this in like carniceria meat counters are some of my favorite to look at. One, because I just see cuts of meat in a whole different style of cutting that I'm not used to cutting personally myself. But it's also like just transcended to like a different time when I walk into that old school butcher shop or that carniceria, where I just see, different things. And then you could get lost in the nostalgia of looking at these cases. You could get lost in the way people cuts and the seasonality. And so to answer your question, do I like artificial greenery or natural greenery when it comes to fluffing your case? I think I like both. And if you have a shop out there, do what works best for you. Maybe your cutting and your ability doesn't need either, and you could just stand out. Or maybe you want to use the real leafy greens to show a abundance or a cornucopia of different varieties. And you could also use it to hide your trays, to hide your platforms and things like that. Or if you're just pushing out so much product and you don't need to worry about that kind of stuff, then just use the plastic kale-like leaves. And it's really going to boil down to what's your personal preference and what's going to look good, and go with the aesthetic of the entire shop that you're in. If you have this old school vibe of a butcher shop with like old meat hooks and like vintage scales and vintage this, maybe you should set up your case to represent that period in time that you're going for. If you have like an ultra modern shop with, the latest, newest cuts, maybe go with what would work best in that scenario. So I hope this was helpful. I hope I answered this question. Let's see what the next one is. And this next question is, you ever seen Gangs of New York? And yes, I saw it many years ago before I was a butcher. And before I really, and I remember Daniel Day-Lewis played Bill the Butcher. And I always see like people with the representation of, Bill the Butcher as this like machismo, all-American guy with that meme of him with the American flag wrapped around him. And even though my avatar on social media is the American Butcher, me and Bill are very different. He was a racist piece of shit in real life. And his character in the movie also is that, racist against the Irish, racist against the other minorities, or prejudice, or whatever you want to call it. The guy just sucks ass for farts. And people, I don't know, people don't remember that. People just like the imagery of that, so much so that there was a chain of shops in Seattle, of all places, that were his namesake and his using his likeness. And just so you know, Bill the Butcher in real life was a member of the KnowNothing party, which reminds me of another anecdote. And to be a member of the KnowNothings, you had to be a native-born citizen of native-born parents and not Catholic. So the KnowNothings were essentially a nationalist group. It'd be like having a change of butcher shops, called David Duke's or something like that. So yes, I get the point. Have I seen Gangs in New York? Because there is a prevalent character in that movie named Bill the Butcher, who was a butcher, but in real life, that guy fucking sucked. And I think I just wanted to say that piece about it, because I think it's important when people use their certain things likeness, that they understand what impact it had at the time, and how watering down shit like that isn't good, especially in today's climate. It's important to not, what do you call it? It's important to not normalize those kind of beliefs, and that it's more than just a name. Just like how things in, certain parts of the country, it's not just a statue of a general. There's real meaning behind it, and it's important to remember those things. But back to the movie Gangs in New York, starring Daniel Day-Lewis playing the previous mentioned Bill the Butcher, and Leonardo DiCaprio. It was entertaining. It's like a 3-hour movie. I remember it was one of the last movies to come out on VHS that I saw, and it's like a double VHS movie. Leonardo DiCaprio also has Titanic, which was a famed one as well. And Cameron Diaz was also in that movie, but I don't think her character was right for her. Nothing against Cameron Diaz. I once saw her in real life. She came into a butcher shop I was at. She was shorter than I thought and also wearing overalls and with Benji from Good Charlotte. So nothing against her acting abilities. I think she was just the wrong person for that role. And maybe that role detracted away from the story because but again, you also need a love story and these rules for writing cinema to make people to go out because you don't want to alienate half of the audience by not having, a female role and all those things. But personally, I think the movie should have been like an hour and a half and more about the fighting and all that stuff. Anyway, yes, I have seen Gangs in New York. All right, this next question. Knife. Recommendations for new meat cutter. So for years I used the Glacier. I don't know, it's like a black grippy handle with this red collar on it that ran all the way through it. And I loved it. It was scalloped edged. It was great. I got that knife first. I got 2 of them free because when you spend thousands of dollars ordering equipment, you get, a $10 free knife. And I loved it. Maybe I loved it because it was free. And that knife lasted me about a year. I got another one, not for free this time. And it was great. It was stainless, high carbon, but it was softer, so it was easier to sharpen than a lot of high carbon steel knives out there. So I really enjoyed it. And now F. Dick came out with a knife that is very that has the same texture and the grip, and it has a black collar running through it, and it is stronger and holds an edge better. And that is the knife I use now. I use for 98% of my cutting is mostly just like boning, and I can do most of the things with a 6-inch stiff curved F. Dick knife. It's great. And then just the history of knives that I have used over my career are this. When I first started in this industry, I worked for this one guy in Vermont, and he was famous and a hard ass and all that stuff. He gave me, my first day there, he gave me some old beat up knives and pretty much just said, here's your knives. And one was like a beef skinner that was so far worn down, and the other one was a 6-inch, like broad curved Victorinox. They were both Victorinox, Victorinox, Fleischer, whatever you want to call them. It wasn't really a boning knife. These were like for kill floor work, so used for jointing legs off the animal and then skidding out sides and then eviscerating. This is all we needed, unless you were the knocker. Then you would have a 8 to 10-inch straight Victorinox sticking knife. Then if you did pigs, then there was a double-bladed like 7-inch sticking knife, double-sided. Story with those knives, I saw someone use it once, put their thumb on the back of it thinking it was like a regular knife where it had a, the blunt heel, but it's, double-sided, and they bifurcated their thumb, and it was fucking gnarly. Then after using these crappy knives off and on for a few months, my boss finally broke down and got me my own sets of knives, and they were just newer versions of the pre-mentioned ones, except for now I got it's called like a venting knife in poultry. They're like 4 to 5 inches, and they're pointed slightly inwards, and we use these for hide opening. And the reason that you wanted them, pointed slightly inwards or flat but never curved is because you didn't want to dig into the meat and you didn't want to puncture a gut. So you'd use these to make a nice slit in your hide, then use your skinning knife. And these were all, Victorinox. When I moved into the cut room, one of my old knives, the ones they were using over there were these like 10-inch breaking or trimming knives, kind of like breaking knives that were Mundell. I don't know. It's like a Brazilian company, and they were very, very good. And you'd see people like whittle these things down to toothpicks. But I wanted my own set, and also I wanted to differentiate my knives from anyone else. So I, with my own money, bought a set of F-Dick Ergo Grip, the standard blue handles that most people see when they see F-Dick knives. Got myself a 6-inch boning knife. Then I switched pretty quickly to a 5-inch straight boning knife from that curved knife. Then an 8-inch breaker, a 10-inch breaker, a 12-inch staking knife, and then like a 14-inch like true butcher's knife with the rounded edge for like what they. It's fucking dumb. I don't even know why I have it or got it. Never used it. And like I was just so like, yeah, look at all these knives. Look at me, I got all this stuff. And I even got like a toolbox, like that had a tri-stone on top and then held all your knives in the bottom. I just thought it was the fucking bee's knees. I thought it was, like everyone's going to take me seriously. And it was kind of the opposite of what happened, where people are like, man, you got a lot of stuff going on there. And like, what are you going to do? Like every cut you make, switch out your knives, or like, nothing too bad or whatever. So after working in that cut room for a year and a half, I got them down to 3 knives, 8-inch breaking knife, 10-inch scimitar that I use for like cutting steaks, and a 6-inch straight boning knife. They were all F-Dick. And then when I left that place to work for another place, it was more artisan, more artisanal, more of this, more of that. So I switched over to the good old fashioned, wood handled Victorinox knives, which I understand the aesthetics. I understand that it looks good. Even if they are dipped in a resin, wood is porous. It breeds bacteria, and also wood, when you get a little bit of fat on it, it doesn't have grooves like a ergo grip or like a soft groove, or in the handle. So it becomes very slippery, and you could lose it really quick, and you could drop it, damage your knife, damage what you're cutting, and also cut the fuck out of yourself. Those are just my 2 cents on that. I understand the appeal and the artisanal style of, this new nouveau riche style of butchery here. So after working in this boutique setting, I went back to my original knives. And then I pretty much stuck with F-Dick for a very long time until I discovered that Glacier knives. And then there was a point where I had like 3 different brands of knives in my scabber. The reason it's 3 is because back when I had 4, I took my scabber to work at this one guy's shop, and I've told the story several times on the show, and he looked at me and said I had too many fucking knives. And it just brought me back to that previous mentioned time when I had my toolbox with my 14-inch butcher knives and my 12-inch staking knives and my 2-size breaking knives and all this stuff. If I were to put them all on a scabber, I'd probably have like 6 different scabbers around my waist, and it looked like some weird scabber kilt. And I would really look like Bill the Butcher, a huge fucking douche. And I took that very like taken aback. I'm like, well, I only have 4 of them. And the correct answer was 2 knives. And ever since then, I pretty much only use a 6-inch curved boning knife of some brand and a 10-inch staking knife that I use for my breaking as well. So the brands change. They're all quality. Dexter Russell wasn't one that I really got into. I just don't like the way their handles look. F-Dick is great. It's quality. I recommend them. It's what I use for 98% of my cutting. So yeah, hope that answered your question. This next question, Oxtail or Shank? I like both. And I'm going to start with the Shank. I like Shank because it is versatile. It is tough as fuck, and it will, too much of it in your grind. A lot of people will be like, don't put any of it in your grind because it's too sinewy. If you use a grind step down pattern, you start with a half, quarter, then go to an eighth, you won't be able to tell it's in there. As long as you keep your contents cool and you don't end up with smearing, it will be fine because it's less than 10% of your overall grind is going to have Shank material in it. And if you just take out the big pieces of tendon, then you won't taste it in your finished product. I stand behind that, and I will tell you, it's fine to mix it in your grind. But if you're going to separate it and you're going to want to do something else with it, slow smoked Shank makes for great shredded beef, or slow cooked or braised Shank also makes for good shredded beef. And if you want to use it in another sausage application, bone it out and emulsify it. And with all the connective tissue and the more, cartilage in it, it's going to create a better emulsification finished product with the binding and the fluffiness for hot dogs or kielbasa or hot dogs or mortadella or hot dogs. So I like the multiple applications for Shanks. Crosscut Shank is really good. Some people call it Osso Bucco, which literally translates to veal leg or leg of veal. So true Osso Bucco has to be veal, as I like to call it, Awesome Bucco. But anything that's slow cooked, I'm going to enjoy. And then talking about Oxtail, one of my favorite things is working in Vermont, or one of my favorite things, because you look through, you're passed through watercolored glasses, and you also have a fondness where, in retrospect, it's like, man, that was such a great time. When you're in the moment, you're like, fuck this. It'd be winter. It'd be, living in that part of the country, you're at work at 6 a.m, and you don't leave until 6 p.m, and you only see the sun Saturday morning until Sunday night. It was dark, and it'd be snowing, and you just want to go outside. You'd smoke in the pins, maybe run outside to go pee in the snow in your coveralls. And every Friday we did like staff meal, where it would be usually something slow cooked, because people didn't want to go out and drive to the fast food place or something, because the roads would be terrible. And a lot of things that the staff could cook would be the things that people didn't want in their cut sheets, or people didn't fill out, which would be organ meats, or it would be chicken necks, stocks, and oxtail often was one of those, to the point where we had a oxtail cooking competition at our shop, and it was amazing. We had all these crock pots lined up. Everyone did their thing, and it was just so wholesome and comforting being in this, facility full of misfits. And if you've ever worked in a slaughterhouse, it is a facility full of misfits. It's not the Instagram life of people. You have people who work there because of, it's just a job, and it's there, and they don't have see it as glamorous, or have this if they weren't working at the local slaughterhouse, they'd be working at the local paper mill. So you get characters, and I love it. And we're all there cold, talking about what we're going to do on, with our 18 hours of the sun over the weekend. And we're just enjoying some comfort food while there's a storm going on outside, or while we're waiting for beef to show up, or more chickens, or for a cut sheet. So that's why I like Oxtail, because it really brings me back to a specific memory that I have of being in that wood paneled basement with no windows, and the paneling is peeling off the walls. And there was a long fold up table in there that was almost the size of the room, to the point where if you were sitting at the head of the table opposite the door, you had to wait until everyone left so you could get out and finish your break. And if you had to go to the bathroom when you were sitting there, you had to have everyone on one side get up so you could get out. And that's how small this room was. But Oxtail is something more realistically that I would make myself. This next and final question is, have you thought about participating, in the new Butcher show on the History Channel? Maybe this will answer your question.
Welcome to The Butcher, an edgy new competition show that pits America's top virtuosos of meat against one another in a head-to-head winner-takes-all throwdown. With knives drawn, these massive cutters battle the cloth and each other in a showdown designed to put their skills, strategy, and artistry to the ultimate test. To quote the Beastie Boys, this ain't Sam the Butcher bringing Alice to me.
Did that answer your question? That is a video of me reading line for the hosting position. That's kind of indicated that I wasn't manly enough. It's very funny. The casting director was like, we're looking for like a real manly guy. How tall are you? And I was like, I don't know, 6 foot. Like, how much do you weigh? And I was like, ooh, this is getting personal. How big could you grow your beard? I was like, yeah, pretty big. And I think, even though I talk with perfect diction, not really, I mess up words all the time, that I portray a butcher very accurately. But either way, they decided to go in some other direction, which I fully support, because the host has a better hairline than me and a Texas drawl, which I certainly do not have. I certainly have a Californian accent, which may not be relatable and may not translate well with other people. As far as other things in the show, I am actively involved in the fact that I watch it every week, because I think it does do a good service for our industry. It shows a light on it. It shows that it's not just breaking down stuff. It's about, portioning and giving the customers what they want, which is a very important tool. I also think it's good in the sense that it may get more people to want to be involved in butchery, and maybe make more butchers or cutters want to be involved in whole carcass utilization. Besides knowing the art director and some of the judges, every episode I've also known personally a competitor or two that I have met through social media and through this journey of cutting meat. Daniel, who won the first episode, I had the pleasure of cutting with during the tryouts for the American team for the World Butchers Challenge. And he won, and he is a great cutter and produced beautiful work. And then Sean Kelly, who won this last week, that guy is, we're friends, and we literally text each other like 40 fucking times a day. And his stuff, it blew my mind. Like, I knew he was good, but just to see it transcend in that realm versus, social media, even though, Sean, you did fuck up that brisket, but that's fine. It was a mistake. I wouldn't have made it, but you did it, but you carried it so well, Sean. But to answer your question, would I be involved in the show other than someone who's watching it, absolutely, I'd love to be involved in the show in some capacity or the other. But it, more so than just watching it. As far as like competing in the show, I haven't been asked. And two, I would personally have this huge fear of fucking up. And then what does that say about me and my skill when because I'm on the American team? And then people will be like, well, if you can't do that, then or et cetera, or whatever. Then a part of me is like, I don't want to do that because I've already achieved or am in the process of achieving the goals that I've set out. Being on the American team, 100% of my concentration as far as extracurricular activities in this industry should be focused on that and everyone on that team, and my country. So yes, I've seen the show. I love the show. Have no idea what an involvement, and I don't even know if they want me. I'm saying this as if I'm some something in this industry other than a lonely podcast host. And as far as like reality TV and all that, yes, I think everybody has that Truman Show, like, man, if people could see what I'm doing right now, they would love it. Be it like a show based around me or whatever. Everyone has those weird fantasies. I have them. And if you say you don't have them, then you're probably a liar. And I think it would be much more interesting if I was on a show about just living in the Pacific Northwest, because this shit's awesome. Anyway, to close out the show with some final plugs. Support the American team. Links will be in the show notes. You could either support our GoFundMe. Another way you could support is by joining the Butchers Guild, which I am every member of the U.S. team is a proud member of. What does that membership give you? It gives you access to a database of other like-minded butchers. It gives you access to people like me to answer your questions if you have questions. It gives you access to master classes taught by some of the best butchers, saloonists, and business people in this industry. So if you're considering it, please check it out. There will be a link in the show notes. And until next time, please keep your knives sharp. Whatever brand you use, preferably F-Dick. You can buy those from Davidson's Butcher Supply. And please live in the margin. Thank you.